Hi and welcome to Check Your Thread, a podcast about sewing more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 14 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impact that it may have. I really hope that you'll join me in this journey. Hello, listener with awesome taste in podcasts. How are you doing? Have you had any time for making recently? It's been a horrible and very sad week for our family, so I've struggled to find any motivation to do any making, really. I've been working on my rag a bit, though, plus a random knitwear experiment that I've had brewing for a while, but the jury is out on whether or not it's going to be a success. Sustainability-wise, it's been all about meal planning, trying to prevent food waste, even if that means eating odd combinations of food for dinner, and keeping the heating off as much as possible despite it turning really nippy lately. Oh, and charity shopping hard for pre-loved clothes and shoes for my kids. If you've had any sustainability successes or discoveries recently, please let me know. I'd love to delight in your wins. I'm excited to thank 5 wonderful people this week for signing up to help keep this podcast going via Patreon. Thank you so much to Teresa, Catherine, Kim, Maxine and Muren. You are all amazing. And apologies, Muren, if I've butchered the pronunciation of your name. If you want to be part of the epic crew that fuels this podcast fire and are in a position to do so, please consider signing up and giving your support. You can do so at patreon.com/checkyourthread or find the link on checkyourthread.com. Let's crack on with today's episode. I am really thrilled to be bringing you this conversation between myself and a wonderful maker called Judy Williment-Ross. Judy is a New Zealand-based maker who basically broke the internet when her lockdown project, The Epic Dress, was featured on the Sew Over 50 Instagram account. The amount of thought and work that she puts into her creations is mind-blowing, that is clear. But what you might not be able to tell from the photos is the amount of thought that Judy puts into choosing projects and selecting materials, and the level of self-awareness she has into the why as well as the how of her sewing practice. For example, she has a carefully developed set of rules and criteria in place that her material acquisitions must comply with. Rather than experiencing this as restrictive, however, it forces her to be incredibly resourceful and creative in her approach. And by the sounds of it, this adds layers of meaning and enjoyment into the whole process. We also get into Judy's experiences of raising her 5 kids to embrace and value handmade and second-hand clothes. And she provides some great tips on this for those of us with kids in our lives. This is a longer episode, nearly an hour, and I did consider cutting this one up into 2 episodes. However, it just made more sense to keep it as one complete conversation. So basically, you're in for a pre-Christmas treat with this one. Other holidays are available. Show notes, as ever, include links to everything we discuss and pictures of a couple of Judy's creations also. I know you're going to, because Judy is amazing, but I have to say it, enjoy. Awesome. Thank you and happy birthday.
Thank you. I've had a lot of birthdays, so it's like, oh, yeah, it's just another one.
Oh, bless you. Well, I'm very grateful that you've chosen to start this one being on my podcast.
I'm so flattered that you asked me, and I can't think of a better way to start my birthday than, as you put it, nerding out about sewing.
Love it. Yeah, exactly. So can we please start the way I always have to start? Can you tell us who you are, where you are, and what fills your days?
I'm Judy Ross. I live in Dunedin, New Zealand, which is quite low down on the east coast of the South Island. Fabulous place to live. And what fills my day is a succession of things that get in the way of sewing. My day job, I'm a medical receptionist at the University Student Health Clinic, which is full on and very brain heavy. So it is really nice to come home and just switch all that off and sew.
Yeah. Wow. I've never been to Dunedin. I've been to the South Island, but I never got that far down, unfortunately.
It's a fantastic city to live in. We're right on the coast. I can walk to the beach in, 10 minutes. It's big enough to have the amenities of a city, but small enough that you don't get lost in it. It's lovely.
Perfect. So I think I first discovered you via Instagram. I think it was via the Sew Over 50 account with their hashtag, which was Sew 50 Sustainable Sewing. And I was like, wow, incredible work. So how long have you been sewing? Like, what kind of part does it play in your life at the moment?
It's always been a massive part of who I am and what I do. I started sewing when I was really young. Mum taught me to do like a hand overcast stitch, thread a needle, tie a knot, and just stitch two bits of fabric together when I was really young. But she didn't really sew beyond necessary mending. So I don't know where I got the fascination from. But as soon as she taught me, I was away, and she let me have things like Dad's old shirts that had been consigned to the rag bin, so I could cut those up and make things. So it was dolls' clothes and soft toys from library books and things like that. And
That's
then,
kind of a full circle, because I've seen an amazing garment that you've made from shirts. It's a beautiful dress, so with like a wrap over front.
yeah, shirts, men's clothes in particular, are often really lovely fabrics that are quite difficult to buy, and they are really common in op shops. Op shops in New Zealand, thrift stores, charity shops. They're everywhere, so I don't feel bad about taking those to cut up and repurpose, because every week there are more. It's not something that's in short supply, and they're such lovely cottons, and they're lovely to wear.
One of the things I really love about your work is that it seems from the outside anyway that you have like a really clearly defined personal style. You seem to really know yourself in terms of like your colours, your silhouettes, and the fabrics you like to work with. Would you say that was so? Or have you always had quite a clear idea of who you are in terms of your clothing?
I think that is true now, but
Right.
it certainly wasn't. When I was younger, I did what every young person does, and I experimented with colours and styles and fabrics. And at some point, I couldn't tell you when, I really took stock of what was in my wardrobe. And there would be garments in there that I had made or bought that I really loved and I never wore. So I started really making an effort to think about why I like certain things and wear them all the time, and why I don't wear other things even if I like them. And once I started to figure out the whys of what I liked and what I didn't like, it became much easier to not add anything to my wardrobe that I liked but knew I wouldn't wear, and to really focus on making and buying things that I knew that I would wear all the time.
Amazing. So what did that process look like for you then? Did you do some sort of like wardrobe challenge, or was it just literally like you just really had a good think over a period of time about what you own?
I think what probably happened was that when I moved at one point, between flats or houses or wherever I was going, and looked at all of my clothes and thought, I haven't worn this. And then it was the good old wardrobe cull, because I was moving, probably kicked it off. And I would just look at things and think, I like this, why don't I wear it? And it would be because it didn't go with anything else in my wardrobe. It wasn't appropriate for my lifestyle at the time. And some things I would keep because it might not be appropriate now, but it might be later. I mean, when you're a stay-at-home mum with small children, white clothes are not helpful. But I'm not always going to be a stay-at-home mum with small toddlers, so that lovely white shirt can stay and I will wear it later. But once I thought more about the why of things, I was a lot more confident in culling things that I knew weren't for me but somebody else would wear. I only add to my wardrobe what I know I'm going to like. And especially because some of the things that I make we're not talking hours, we're talking weeks, months, well over a year in some cases. I've got to be sure I'm going to wear that thing when I've finished it.
Absolutely. So what do you think the benefits are for you now with having a defined personal style? And can you give us any tips for people that perhaps would like to kind of start to get a more of a closer idea of, really kind of like drill down on what they should be making?
When I'm thinking about a new project, whether I'm getting inspired by fabric or a pattern or some mad whim I've had to chop up something and make it something else, the first thing I do is imagine what that garment is going to look like when it's finished. And I'm lucky in that I can do that. So I can imagine this weird thing that doesn't exist and what it's going to look like and how it's going to hang and what it will look like on me, and then think about what is already in my wardrobe and can I picture that garment in my wardrobe and what situation will I wear it. And there are things that I've thought would be amazing, but I know are never going to be practical, so they don't see the light of day. But that idea might get translated into something else later on. So the biggest thing is imagining something as a finished garment. Would I reach for this? Would I wear it?
Yeah.
And if I wouldn't, what elements of it did I like? Would those translate into something else?
Thank you. I'm going to have to apply more whys, I think. That's so good.
Fascinated by the why. That my degree is in clothing and textile science, which is it was a really academic focus on clothing and textiles, right from yarns, fibres, fabrics, clothing, interactions with bodies. And it was absolutely fascinating. And it was because I wanted to know the why of things, why things do what they do, why a fabric will behave as it does, and how you can measure properties and what you can then learn from that and apply to making. And that it was a fascinating degree.
That's a real almost like a scientific kind of approach.
It is literally a science degree.
Oh, really? So you just mentioned then a couple of garments that you said took you not hours but months to create. So I think that's when I first discovered you. It was with the epic dress. I'm sure that's how many people discovered you. So it was like, I think it broke the Instagrams for a while.
It got a lot of attention, which did surprise me.
Why were you surprised? It's a work of art.
I think initially I was surprised because I was documenting it as I went, more as a diary for myself, so I could look back on the process of making it. And it caught imagination because it started as a lockdown project, and the entire world did lockdown projects. And this one...
Yeah, but not as many. I mean, I made a denim poof. You made epic dress. So for those who haven't seen it yet, obviously I'll pop a picture in the show notes, but can you describe what it was and then the thoughts and the story behind it, please?
Okay, so the dress itself is fitted bodice, very flared A-line skirt so it goes almost to my ankles. And what it's made from is a base, which was cut from an upcycled sheet. And then on top of that, I layered scraps of off-cut fabrics from all my previous upcycles, which are mostly men's dress pants. So these were all the little random shapes that were really difficult to use in anything else. Each piece of dress was cut out of the sheet, and I laid each piece in scraps, and that took days all over the floor.
I can imagine.
We were all at home. What else was I going to do? So once I decided what I liked, I basted everything in place, which took several more days. And then over the course of a year, I stitched the scraps to the backing in rows of stitching, just a running stitch, 5 millimeters apart.
All done by hand?
All by hand, yeah.
Wow.
I did the construction of the dress by machine, but all of the stitching on the surface is by hand. And I added a lot of time markers and bits of things that interested me as I went. So when Anzac Day came round, my daughter and I made felt poppies as an online school activity, and I thought, I could put a poppy on the dress. Oh. So I found some red fabric and I put a poppy on for Anzac Day, and I put
like a diary as well.
Well, it was in the end, and I put a line from song lyrics from my favourite musician. And my favourite musician is David Gray, and he is coming to New Zealand, and I'm finally going to get to see his 2 years late concert in Wellington. But his breakout song was Babylon, and the opening line of that is Friday night I'm going nowhere. And I just thought that was hilarious, so I put that on the dress. A lot of Friday nights we weren't going anywhere. And I just, all these things that appealed to me. So the dress became a real autobiography and a diary. And every time I posted updates of what I was doing, I sort of picked up more people who would see it, usually on So Over 50. And what intrigued me was that people started saying, I love when this pops up in my feed, and they really enjoyed the progress, because it would be weeks and weeks between updates because everything took so long.
Yeah.
When it was nearly finished, Sandy from So Over 50 asked if I would like to do a guest post on So Over 50 with the grand reveal of the dress. And I thought, that would be fun, because I always enjoy the guest posts that they have. It's someone else's perspective is always fascinating.
I love it.
So I finished the dress and my husband and I went down to the beach one absolutely beautiful evening, and we took photos on the rocks down there, and I was really happy with my photos. I thought, great, if I'm going to do a guest post, a grand reveal, at least I've got some nice photos. And then the post went up and it absolutely blew up, and I was really, really surprised at how many people were so impressed by this dress that I've made, because to me it was just this humble dress made from literally stuff I had in my house on day one of lockdown. That was the restriction I gave myself, and that was no challenge at all because I'm a shocking hoarder. So it was stuff I had, and
yeah, everyone knows. Everyone who is a sewer knows, or has an inkling, if not knows, how much work that you put into that. So, like, I think we're all just like doffing our caps, saluting you.
Thank you.
It was truly incredible.
It is hands down my favourite dress I think I've ever made, and I mean, got it on today. And I got a lot of comments from people as it was going along and after it was finished about it belonging in a museum, which I thought was really, I don't know, super flattering, but quite amusing. I think, oh, it's a dress that's going on my body and I'm going to wear it.
So having finished that magnum opus, you then turned around. I don't know what the time gap was, but you then started another one in the form of the hexi-coat.
Actually overlapped because
really?
Too many ideas, too little time. I started making hexies before I had finished the epic dress because I just got this wild idea at some point because I was on Pinterest one day and I saw a hexie that was made out of smaller pieces. So a pieced hexie. So
what is that? Can you explain?
If you imagine a hexagon and then you imagine that hexagon, say, divided into 3 diamonds or made up of smaller pieces. So all of those smaller pieces come together to make a hexagon.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, that's fun. I could do that with my really little scraps. And then once I liked that one, all of these others started popping up and I started looking for them. And I thought, if I make one size of hexagon and then make different patterns within that hexagon, I could use some really small scraps, and I thought that would be fun. And quilt coats were starting to.
So you knew it was going to be a coat from the beginning?
Very early on, I thought, imagine if I could make a coat and just use all my tiny scraps. So I got started with the hexagons, and I have quite a few different designs of hexagons. They're not all the same, but because a lot of the fabrics they all look really good together. So I started making those up just in my spare time. That became my portable project. So I wasn't really doing that as my full-time project until I'd finished the epic dress, and then I got stuck in and I started doing a bit of maths to work out how many I was going to need to make the coat. And my first estimate was about 750 hexagons. So I just started making up the hexagons, and these are leftover scraps from the upcycle.
You're doing these by hand?
Doing it by hand, yes. And I mean, I really enjoy hand sewing. I find it a really restful thing to do. So it's a really important thing for my mental health, I think. So it's not like this is a chore. This is something that I really, really enjoy. And if I'm sitting in front of the TV at night, I'm sort of stitching away.
I suppose there was no deadline either, was there? You didn't, so you could take your time, yeah.
Yeah. So in the end, when we had our second lockdown here in Dunedin we only had 2. So I thought, okay, time to start sewing these hexagons together. And I was still making them, and I thought, I'm going to start sewing them together. So I started sewing the coat together. And when I had half of it, I sort of pinned them all together so I could see what it was going to look like as a coat. And that was fun. But again, I had a very good idea before I started of what it was going to look like. And I obsessively kept count as I went. I know how many pieces.
Total?
5,048.
Wow. And that was all scraps from previous projects?
Okay, so most of it was scraps from previous upcycles, the really tiny bits that weren't going in anything else. Some was scrap fabric, which was like new fabric that had been made into something, and there were just little scraps left over. And I had a couple of ties that had been bought in an op shop a couple of years previously because one of my daughters wanted to make something and she couldn't remember what she'd wanted to make. And I said, fine, they're going in the coat. So they did. So they just got completely...
things from around your house.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well,
And
let's talk about your fabrics and your choices and how you source them. So you do use a lot of like men's dress trousers. What is it appeals to you about those and where do you get them?
well, like the shirts, they're nice fabrics. I've had so many pairs of men's dress pants that are 100% wool, which I've bought for a couple of dollars on the clearance rack in an op shop because, they're damaged. There's a bit of wear at the hem or, sometimes they're a bit thin at the knee. I love buying damaged things because I feel no guilt about cutting them up.
Absolutely.
If I buy something that is wearable, I have my own self-imposed rules for
I
what
was
I
going to
will.
ask you, what are your rules?
Well, they matter to me, and I don't sort of feel that everybody has to follow my rules because this is what's important to me. And several things matter. One is a huge one is waste. If I take a garment that I'm going to take from a wearable state to an unwearable state by using part of it, I feel really strongly that I shouldn't waste any of it. There will inevitably be some waste. But I would get really upset when I'd see pictures on Pinterest of somebody taking a wool jumper and cutting around a little bit of the body to make a hat. And you think that was a wool jumper that could have been worn and now you've got a hat. What happens to the rest of the jumper? And the same thing with jeans where bits of it get used. What happens to the rest of it? And sometimes what happens to it. A lot of people who upcycle will mention what they're going to do with the rest of the garment. But it really bothered me that something went from being wearable to not, and it was waste. It wasn't going anywhere to be worn by anyone else. It's nothing but waste. So if I take something, I need to use as much of it as possible. And when I start opening up a pair of trousers, it might take 2 or 3 or 4 projects before I've used it all. But there are things that I've got basically nothing left, and that pleases me knowing that I haven't wasted anything. I keep everything that I can use. So that's a big thing, is don't waste it. If I make it unwearable, use it all or as much of all of it as possible. And also because I try as much as possible to get wool trousers and cotton shirts, if it does go out, it's compostable. It's not polyester. I do use polyester, but I prefer natural fibers if I can get them. And another really big thing is not depriving someone else of something usable. And this was something that I confess I hadn't thought of, other than, if I'm choosing clothes, not taking something that would be better left in its original state. But I heard someone somewhere talking about plus size clothes particularly, and how frustrated they get with people who thrift these things for upcycling because there's a lot of fabric in them. But there aren't enough plus size clothes in the world as it is, new or secondhand. And plus size people who don't sew struggle to find clothes that fit them. So once I heard that, I thought, oh my God, that makes so much sense. So that's it. Hard and fast rule. No plus size clothes unless they are damaged and on a clearance rack, and I know they're not going anywhere but landfill if I don't take them. And the other thing for me is going for things that are plentiful. So men's dress pants and men's dress shirts, the racks are always full. There are loads of them. So I'm not running the risk of taking something that would be better serving someone else. So those are the 3.
Amazing.
Don't waste it. Don't take plus size, and don't take things that would be better serving someone else.
I love that. They were fantastic rules. I think they need to be embroidered somewhere.
Oh, there you go. I think I need to put that on something now.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm going to drop that project idea on you.
Too many ideas, too little time.
Where are your hotspots for thrifting then?
There are several around town. We have quite a lot of op shops here in Dunedin. So I just go to whatever op shop I happen to be walking past, and I head for the clearance rack first and see what's there. And then I take a trip round all of the women's wear because there's always more of that. Because I will buy secondhand clothes to wear. And if I buy clothes just to wear, I will alter them but keep them in a wearable state as they are. So if ultimately I don't use it, it can go back and be used by someone else. And then I'll go to the men's section, and then I'll plough through the trouser rack and see what fabrics appeal to me. And then I'll go looking at the labels and see what they're made from. And if they are wool and I like the fabric, then they usually come home with me. But I've got quite a stash of them now, so I've stopped going to the op shops because I don't need anything.
Oh, really? You've had to literally just bypass the op shops for a while?
I don't need anything. I have got enough for whatever projects I dream up next. So stop. Don't tempt myself. I don't need it.
I'm quite jealous because I think that most of the charity shops here, they don't have the clearance rail. Generally, the ones that are near where I live anyway. Really. And if they do, they don't have anything that is damaged. I've just found one nearby that is just started having like a tub by the till, but that is the first I've seen in so long. And I find that frustrating because you know that there's such a large percentage of things that they obviously are not putting out on the rack. And you think, well, like, where are they going? And I think we know where they're going, sadly. And I find it so frustrating because otherwise you want to, reuse textiles where you can. But as you say, if everything's in a good, usable state, you kind of want to avoid taking that because somebody who needs jeans or needs a jacket or whatever in its existing state, you don't want to take that from them. But equally, you don't necessarily want to go and buy a brand new fabric because of the impact of that,
Yeah. And another thing I find, there's not a lot of secondhand fabric in the op shops, but in Dunedin there is an absolutely amazing outfit called Stitch Kitchen, which I think one of your previous New Zealand guests mentioned. And that
Sarah So Love, I think she mentioned it, didn't she?
And that is amazing because they take all of this donated fabric and their volunteers spend, I don't know how many hours measuring it, rolling it, pricing it. And so they have what they call their maker's pantry, and it's all, secondhand donated things. So they've got everything, fabrics, patterns, notions, really well laid out that you can go in and buy. And they also do sewing classes and mending classes, and the whole focus is keeping textiles out of landfill, and it's amazing. And I've been there numerous times. I take my youngest daughter. I've managed to indoctrinate my children with the love secondhand and making, and we've had some fantastic things from there.
Wow, it sounds so good.
I would love to see that kind of thing being the norm. Every town should have something like Stitch Kitchen.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. I hope that more people hear this and get inspired to start up in their own town. Yeah. Amazing. Tell me about do you have a system for when you've started to use the garment? As you said, I like the way you call it opening up some trousers, because I can really imagine when you take all the seams apart and stuff and remove waistbands, you are kind of opening up for this fabric to reveal itself, aren't you?
Yeah. Literally opening it up. When I'm taking apart a pair of men's trousers, I've got a feeling I did actually put a picture on my Instagram somewhere of trouser leg that I had completely disassembled. I undo the seams, and I love chain stitched seams because you just pick out a couple of stitches at one end and pull the other end, long thread. And I keep all of those for basting. I have a little bag of threads that I use for basting.
I was speaking to previous guest Ellie Hernandez about that. I don't know if you heard that episode. He upcycles jeans. He was talking about the pop, 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 pop when it all comes out. So pleasing.
Yep. And all of the overlocker threads as well. And then once I've unpicked everything, I'll press it so it's all nice and flat. And then for this particular one, I cut it into strips. So I'd worked out what width of strip I could cut to get the full use from hem to waist, and then narrower strips on the sort of triangle-y bits at the sides. So the usable strips of fabric used almost the entire piece, and then the little bits that were too small went into the bag of scraps for hexies. But yeah, when I start on a garment, I undo it. Very, very rarely I will actually cut the seams off because I want to harvest every single millimetre. And I don't always need it, but sometimes you just need that little corner to go into the seam allowance.
Absolutely.
I read a story when I was really young, primary school, and the point of the story was, a girl and her father who didn't love Christmas, and she brought him around, blah, blah, blah. But she lived with her father and her grandmother, and her grandmother had lived through the Depression. And there was just this one really short passage about the grandmother who would have her good dress, and then when it got a bit worn, she would turn the collar and it would become a house dress, and then when it got a bit worn, it would be cut down to an apron, and then I think it became dishcloths and then dust rags, and it went down to nothing. But the line that has stuck with me since I was a child was that once she got her hands on a piece of fabric, it wasn't getting out of her clutches for the rest of her life. And that has stuck with me since I was a child. And I've thought, yeah, that's me. Once I get a hold of a piece of fabric, I feel responsible for what happens to it. And I don't like waste, and I don't like the thought of what happens to it if I throw it away. There is no away. It goes somewhere, and I don't like the thought that what I throw away is potentially going to cause harm somewhere else. I mean, I'm far from perfect, and I do throw things away, but I try and be mindful that what I throw away is minimal as I can make it.
I love that. I can imagine, that having a big impact, that passage. In fact, your Hexie dress really reminds me of something that I saw. There was an exhibition at the Imperial War Museum about 6 years ago called Fashion on the Ration. And there was a house dress in that was made of hexagons. When I saw your Instagram, I thought of that. They were bigger than yours. They probably didn't take as many.
Oh, no, actually, that reminds me of one I saw. There was an exhibition at our museum here, which was looking at, it was a fashion-related exhibition, and there was a dressing gown which had been made, I can't remember which World War it was, but it had been made by a mother for her convalescing son. And it was this beautiful, beautiful dressing gown, all hexagons, all scraps, so thoughtfully laid out in terms of what colours went where. And it was this absolutely stunning garment. And I thought, it just made me happy to see that this thing still existed. But it had been made just from scraps, and you could see that it was all different types of fabrics. So this would have been leftovers from all over the place. And it looked amazing. And I love that not even reusing, but using up everything.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get wasted, and creating something that has value in and of itself. And that is something that I haven't touched on either. I don't want to just use my scraps for the sake of using my scraps. I want what they become to have a value in and of itself.
So you're talking about value, and I mean, making a convalescing son a dressing gown, I can't imagine more of a deeper value, really.
Me too. Of all the things I saw in that particular exhibition, that was the one that stuck with me.
Is that a period of history that you take inspiration from, or that interests you?
I think I'm interested in everything. The entire history of textiles, from when people first started stringing bits of literally string together to make fibre, right through to the modern textile production. I find all of it fascinating. But the things that resonate, I guess, where resourcefulness enters the picture, where need has created something new. I think those are the ones that speak to me personally.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by absolutely beautiful, indulgent silks of a bygone era where they cost a year's wage for a yard of silk, and the unimaginable wealth you had to have to wear those things. And the difference today, you can go to Kmart and buy a $3 t-shirt. But I think, the things that stick with me are the things that have some sort of emotional resonance. I love seeing things that have been repaired and altered. A lot of what you see in museums are the absolutely pristine, untouched versions of something. It's the best version of something, but you learn the most from something that's been a bit worn so you can see inside it, or something that has been repaired and altered. And I can't help imagining, who did this? Why did they take this dress and change the style of it? Was it to fit another person? Was it because it had been sitting around and it needed to look more modern? And I love to see the wear on things, because it can tell you about what the person who wore it did. If something is worn a lot in a particular place, you can see, okay, this is rubbed a lot. And like an underarm, they possibly had a desk job, so their arm was moving on their desk. It's just those kinds of things. It's getting a glimpse of the who inside the clothing, and the why.
I guess you see more of that when you do shop on the rails of that have the wear. So you were saying that you've managed to indoctrinate one of your children into
all of my children are very happy to wear homemade and secondhand, and that was something I wondered about before I had children, because you read stories about children growing up who hated having to wear stuff that mum made because it's not the same as what all their friends are wearing. And I really wondered whether my children would be okay with wearing homemade stuff, and they've all love it. Both of my daughters can sew. The boys all can, but none of them are particularly keen on it.
So was sewing something that you insisted that they learn, or was it something that you waited until they showed some interest?
Show an interest, and here's the sewing machine, have a go. My older daughter certainly made herself a few things. She's 22, so she's sort of gone through high school, and both daughters, when they've done textiles classes at school, because they'd done stuff at home, they knew a lot more than everyone else in the class, and cheerfully say they didn't learn anything because they already knew everything that they were taught, but they really enjoyed it. My younger daughter, she's just finished a module, and she made a tote bag, which was great, but she finished it and then she had nothing to do for 2 days because everybody else was still going.
She was threading everyone's machine up for them.
Yeah, literally. She was filling their bobbins and threading their machines and troubleshooting. It was great. But the older one, while she can and did make a couple of things for herself, very quickly got onto the idea once she got to about 15, 16 of begging and pleading me to do it for her because, in her words, I want it to be good. And, rolling eyes.
It's a little bit of flattery. Oh, okay.
So, okay, fine. So I feel like I'm constantly making her all of her good things. So when she goes to her uni balls.
I've seen some of these. They look amazing. She's so lucky.
And and she knows it, and she loves telling her friends, oh, mum made it. And they all think she's so lucky because her mum is a dressmaker who can make her these amazing things. And that's why she gets away with it, I think, so much, is because she's so appreciative of the fact that she gets something custom made for her, and she values it really highly, which is great.
That's wonderful. So how do you think that you managed to avoid that stage where, because I think sometimes children who have had their clothes made for them when they're young, they don't think anything of it, and then they maybe get to a certain point, maybe early teens or something, where kind of peer pressure and stuff gets involved, and then there's like the rejection of the handmade. At that point, all you can do is hope that they then kind of come back. But it sounds like you managed to avoid that bit. Any tips?
I don't know how we avoided that bit. I think part of it is allowing them to have the things that they wanted, but nobody ever really said, oh, I desperately need this because all my friends have it. My younger daughter, she's 14, and she and her friends go op shopping for entertainment. They're all into it, which I think is amazing. So it's like, here, have some extra money to go op shopping. I'll do anything to encourage this. But also making things that they want, even if it's fiddly and annoying. If they want something, get them invested in the outcome so they really like whatever it is and really enjoy wearing it. And I think that's possibly why they've always been happy with handmade. Georgia, my older daughter, is graduating with the first of her 2 degrees at the end of this year. So naturally we need a new outfit for graduation. And so we went diving through my stash, which is extensive, and found leftovers from various things, including leftovers from a sweatshirt I'd made her when she was maybe 8 or 9. And she had such fond memories of this hoodie that I'd made her. She said, I remember that. It had blue piping and it was this and that. She said, I love that hoodie. And it made me so happy that she has these fond memories now of something that I'd made her when she was a lot younger.
I'm so heartened to hear what you're saying, because I'm now at a point where, my daughter, she's 9, just turned 9. She's got a lot of opinions. But I've started, in the hope of inoculating her against that rejection phase that we were talking about, even if it's literally I'm making her a pair of undies, I'll get her to choose the elastic. I've got a little stash of fold over elastic, and I'll get her to choose, even if it's like the combo I wouldn't have gone for, but I'm thinking, no, it's going to go on your body. Like, if she can make at least one decision in every project, I feel like there is something of her in there, and there's an investment in there.
Yeah. I think that is key, is that she's got some sort of investment in the outcome, even if it's not what you would choose. Or probably almost especially if she knows it's not what you would choose, then she really feels a connection to that project. It's like, Mum wouldn't have chosen this, but I chose it. It's about me. Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, that's good to know. I feel really heartened. Thank you. I let her take my overlocker the other day. I was terrified, but it went okay.
I know that overlocker scares me, but the kids love it. My younger daughter was making, what was she making? Oh, she's made herself a few things. And when she got on the overlocker, and she was so excited, she said, it's like sewing, but faster and with knives. I was like, oh, Nikki, don't put your fingers under there. But it was fine.
It's such a good definition. It's like sewing, but faster and with knives.
I know, that definition was awesome.
Okay, you need to make yourself a cover for your overlocker, and that needs to be embroidered on it.
Yes.
Another project for you.
Yeah, my overlocker needs a cover anyway, and that is the perfect thing to put on it. Oh, okay, that's two fabulous ideas for things to embroider. Thanks, Zoe.
That's going to be so fun. I cannot wait to see that come up on your feed.
Oh, yeah. Isabella came up with a quote, but it was your idea to put it on the cover. So, yep, you both get credit for that one.
I love that I had a teensy bit of involvement in this clearly epic thing that's going to occur.
Oh, I need it now.
So what about so you're talking about resourcefulness. Is there other ways in which resourcefulness kind of plays out in your life? Where did it come from anyway, this sense of, of really kind of being like a steward for the things that you have in your possession?
It would have started when I was a child. My father in particular was very anti-consumerism and very pro making things yourself, and if something breaks you repair it, and those life lessons: anti-waste, anti-consumerist. If you want it, make it. If it's broken, fix it. If you don't know how, figure it out. And I learned all those lessons just by osmosis, because that was the way he lived his life. So when it came to sewing, that was my approach without even thinking about it. And it wasn't until much later in my life that I realised where I'd picked that up and why I'd picked it up. And everything that I learned about the state of the world made me realise it's important. It's not just a good way to be. It's important for the future of our earth that we stop consuming more than we need. So over time, I came to think more and more about where the things that I own come from and where they go. There are an awful lot of things in our house that are other people's cast-offs as they've upgraded. It's like, yep, we'll take that. There's a lot of life left in that. That's where our oven came from. A friend of my husband's was remodeling his kitchen and gave us his oven. All sorts of things. So many things we've had because someone else has finished with them. When we did need to upgrade our kitchen after we'd been here for a few years because it was old, when we bought this house, it hadn't had any work done on it for a long time, and it was not super functional. So we did upgrade the kitchen. So putting in a new to us oven saved us hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It was fantastic. But yeah, just all these things that people are finished with and they don't necessarily want to sell, and they don't want to go to the hassle of what you have to do to get rid of them, to dump them. So they just come our way. And because I am a sewer and people know that I am happy to upcycle, I get offered textiles, so clothing, sheets, fabric, and I take all of it. And I use most of it. And if it's a fabric that is not to my taste, it becomes lining or pockets or toiles, because I do test a garment. If I'm not sure about how it's going to go, I will do the test garment. So make that out of a fabric I wouldn't otherwise wear. So all these things eventually get used. And I've only been in my current job for a little under 3 months, but they've started figuring out that I sew, because I do wear quite distinctive clothing. And it's a great conversation starter when I wear the epic dress to work.
I bet.
And just the other day, I was chatting with one of the nurses, and she said, "Oh, I've got this piece of fabric I bought to put on the back of a chair, and then I decided I'm not going to do it. I was going to take it to an op shop, but would you be interested?" It's like, "Yes, please." So, yeah, word gets around and things come your way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of my best tips for when people are starting out or when people are trying to sew on a budget. Let people know that you sew. I mean, then you obviously have to defend yourself from all the kind of, "Oh, can you just take up my trousers," or whatever.
If somebody says, "Can you hem my trousers?" I'll say, "Yes, I'll charge you this much money for it." But the thing is, if they're not prepared to pay, then, off they go. But generally speaking, people are quite happy. And, it's not a lot of money, but it's the principle.
Absolutely.
This is my time and my skill, and that is worth something. So if someone says, "Can you hem my trousers?" It's like, "Yep, if you pay me this much." And then they're really happy to, because they know they're not taking advantage because they're going to pay me.
Yeah. So you are happy to do some alterations and repairs.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had some fantastic alteration jobs. Sometimes they're fun and sometimes they're not, but it's always a challenge to turn something that doesn't work for this person now into something that does. And even if it's not fun, it's really satisfying to do that, because it saves something from being unwearable. So I've altered all manner of things over the years. One of my personal favorites was a bridesmaid's dress.
Yeah.
I had made a wedding dress for this lady, lovely, lovely lady, and I've done a lot of repairs and alterations and things for her over the years, but she was actually the textiles teacher at my kids' intermediate school.
You made her wedding dress?
And I made her wedding dress. And so I call it the too hard basket. I get what's in everybody's too hard basket. So she comes to me with the things that she doesn't feel sort of able to do herself. But I made her wedding dress, and she had these lovely dresses for her bridesmaids. I think I might have altered one of them. They were off the rack ones. And then a year later, she was going to be a bridesmaid for one of her bridesmaids, but she was pregnant. And so what she did was get back two of the dresses from her bridesmaids, and I added panels from the bodice of one of them into another one, and there was ribbon over the seams anyway. So by the time I covered the seams of the addition, you couldn't tell it was there, and there was enough fullness in the skirt that I just had to let it out. So we combined these two dresses to make one. Really satisfying.
That's like a fun challenge, and also so thrifty. So good.
It was. I was really impressed. And it looked amazing when it was finished.
And how nice for her as well, wearing a couple of the dresses that were at her own wedding.
Yeah, it was a really good use of those bridesmaids' dresses, because, I mean, the standard line is you can cut it shorter and wear it again, but nobody ever does.
No, because you just look like you're in a shorter bridesmaid's dress.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to have the lifestyle of lots of cocktail parties.
Oh, and who does that? Actually, that reminds me of another really satisfying project.
Sure.
This is my older daughter again. Naturally, when she goes to school formals, I had to make her dresses. But one year, the dress I made her was a strapless dress with a bodice that had a lace overlay, but the skirt was actually a cotton sateen, big floor length, A-line, not super full, but there was a lot of fabric in it. It was a cotton sateen, looked fabulous. And then after the formal, we cut the skirt off and used the skirt and the bits of leftover fabric, and I made it into a bomber jacket for her, which looked amazing.
That's so cool.
And her graduation at the end of this year, when we went stash diving, we found the leftover fabric from the formal dress I made her the following year, when she would have been year 13, so she would have been about 18. And it was a very similar skirt style and a very similar fabric. It was like a cotton sateen, so it had a beautiful sheen, but it wasn't really shiny. And she decided she wanted pants and a top for graduation, and we figured this would be absolutely perfect. So we're cutting up that formal dress to make her trousers for grad this year. What warms my heart is that she is, I think, almost more excited about the fact that it's her old formal dress being made into her grad trousers than she is about the trousers themselves.
Yeah. Oh, but there's that connection and that story and almost that parallel. That's beautiful.
it makes me so happy that she has embraced my view on these things.
Brilliant. What I'm getting as well is I'm getting a strong lesson to keep everything.
Yeah. My poor husband is not a hoarder, and I am. Every now and again, he just kind of mutters quietly under his breath about things being somewhere that they shouldn't be. But we have a really big roof cavity and really good access to it. So all of my fabric is stored up there. So to get to my fabric, I have to go and get the ladder from outside and climb up into the roof.
So do you bring quite a lot down in one go? Like, I'm probably going to need these over the next month.
Oh, yes. They come down and then they just sit on our dining table for a month and I think, oh, no, I'm not going to use that now. When am I going back up into the roof to put them away? So, yeah.
What about all your scraps? Where do they live? You sort them out? Is there just a big bag? How does it work?
They're in a few bags, and if you could see just to my right, I call it the abyss. It is the corner next to my desk, and there are bags of scraps. And I have one bag it's not that big, and that's just the little bits that are going in the hexies, and another bag about the same size, which is everything that is too small for the hexies.
Is that going to be stuffing, or what's that going to be?
I've actually got this another mad idea. I want to make a portrait of the epic dress from those tiny bits of leftovers from the epic dress. So I have canvases which my friend gave me because she wasn't going to use them. And I thought what I could do is print out one of the photos of when I was wearing the epic dress and just print it out in like A3, I think, in black and white on paper just to get the outline.
Yeah.
And trace it as a guide and then just put the little scraps on and use as many bits that were in the epic dress as possible.
Oh, wow.
To make a portrait of the epic dress. And then, like I did for the little bag of tiny scraps that I put tulle over the scraps and just free motion stitch over them, do that to make a portrait of the epic dress to hang on the wall. So I'm not sure when that one's going to come about, but I just thought that would be really fun.
Oh, and it's like ever decreasing. Oh, wow.
Oh, no. But ultimately, those will probably become stuffing for something. Or I really enjoyed making the wee bag. I made the wee bag to put my Hexie project in to cart round.
Yeah.
And that was tiny scraps put on a piece of calico, piece of tulle on top, and then free motion stitching to hold it in place. And that worked really well, and I really liked how that looked. So that could go further. That idea could expand. But ultimately...
Jacket.
I'm
going to just say that. It could be a jacket.
It could be a jacket. It could be so many things. But wouldn't it be amazing? See, the Hexie coat is amazing. It is really warm. But I quite like the idea of a lighter jacket. So something not quilted and not so heavy for the sort of spring, autumn. Well, let's face it, I live far enough south. There are days in summer you need a jacket. God, you've given me so many good ideas. I'm totally getting the blame when these things make it to Instagram.
I cannot wait. So where do you get your style inspiration from then? Or do you kind of just let the materials kind of tell you what they need to be?
Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it is just seeing somebody's made something and I think that looks amazing. And I'm quite analytical about why I like something. I was talking about that earlier. The why of things is really helpful. So if I see something I like, I think, why do I like this? Do I like the fabric? In which case that style is not for me. Do I like the shape? Sometimes it's a pattern and I just think that is an amazing design. I need it, and then figure out how it is best going to fit into my personal style. And I've got things that have been kicking around for a while that I just need to finish working out how this particular style is going to work for me. I personally prefer things that are reasonably fitted, so things that follow the line of my torso and then flare out, because my figure, I describe it as like an hourglass with all the sand settled at the bottom. So sort of pear shape. So I feel best in things that are that shape. So when I see a pattern that is not that shape, I kind of have to think about, would I actually wear it? And if I did, what would I do with it so that it felt me? But inspiration comes from everywhere, things I see on the street, things I see on TV, magazines, Instagram, Pinterest, all the usual places people go looking for inspiration. But a lot of the time these days, it's more about a project I want to make, like the epic dress and the hexie coat. So it's almost like I'll think of a technique for repurposing things and then think about what that would work well doing. I'm working on a skirt at the moment, and that's actually getting quite close to being finished. So this one is the skirt from the epic dress. It's exactly the same pattern. I'm just using the skirt portion of it. But I came up with an idea for piecing strips of fabric rather than scraps. So it was all strips that were sewn together in rows of different widths. And now I'm stitching them down in just one stitching pattern because I love the epic dress, but I don't need another epic dress. So the skirt will be different enough that I would wear it. And this is the last piece that's getting hand stitched. So this has been going for months.
Really, I can't wait to see that.
So that's that project. And another project that I'm very much involved in at the moment is recreating a 1932 outfit from Madeleine Vionnet. Because I got my hands on a book produced by the Bunker Fashion College, which has reproduced scaled patterns from a book by Betty Kirk of these amazing extant garments. So these are things that exist and they are scaled patterns of these garments. And the Japanese one by the Bunker Fashion College actually shows you what the scale is so you can scale them up. So I've been working away on that. So I've got this amazing pair of culottes, really nearly finished. They just need a hem, and I'm going to make the other two pieces from that outfit as well.
You've got such interesting projects.
Well, the necessities of life I make because they are necessary, but the things that I find the most the things that are most creatively inspiring and that fill me with joy are the things that are more challenging. And it's part of my mental health, I think. It feeds my center of whatever I can't remember what the chemical is, whichever the thing is that releases the chemical that you get when you're happy. These really challenging, interesting projects are what sets that chemical loose.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. I've loved chatting with you.
It's been amazing. I love your podcast. It's such an honor to be invited on it. It's fantastic talking to you.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!